And when Strangelove was finished, and I left the theater, and I stood on the curb waiting for my father to pick me up, I had totally forgotten that I had a letter threatening to draft me into the United States Armed Services. And that's when I first became aware of the power of Stanley Kubrick. The first time I saw 2001, I believe it was in Hollywood, the Pantages Theater. He took you into space for the first time. I mean, since 2001, no documentary, no other movie, no IMAX experience being on the shuttle and looking down at Earth has ever really put me in space as much as 2001 did, and made me want it so desperately. Want to be part of that great mystery. Want to be at the forefront of the pioneers that would discover, the monolith and Stargate and what lies beyond. So that was maybe, for me, his most realistic movie that he had ever made. And I think his second most realistic movie that he ever made for me was Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange is a depiction of grotesque violence, but it also has utter contempt for violence. And it is almost like saying, why isn't somebody doing something about this? Where's the world when these acts of man against man are happening all over the world, every 30 seconds? Where's justice? Where's order? Why do we allow this chaos to happen? And of course, the great morality play that is Clockwork Orange is that after all of this, deprogramming and a kind of proselytizing of the Malcolm McDowell character through science and theory, he comes out the other end more charming, more witty, and with such a devilish wink and blink at the audience that I am completely certain that when he gets out of that hospital, he's going to be worse than he was when he went in. And so in a sense, I've always felt that Clockwork Orange was Stanley's most defeatist movie. The film where he appears to totally give up on society. And the film that maybe justifies why he lives in St. Albans in the safety of the British countryside. I'll tell you a quick story. When we first met, which was 1980, when he was just finishing the construction of his sets for The Shining, and we met for the first time, we talked a lot about movies, and I was about to make Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was actually moving on to his stages. When he finished, I was moving in. When it was all over and the movie was done, I saw Stanley again and went to his house for dinner in London and St. Albans, and he asked me, how did you like my movie? And I only seen it once, and I didn't love Shining the first time I saw it. I have since seen Shining 25 times, one of my favorite pictures. Kubrick films tend to grow on you. You have to see them more than once, but the wild thing is, name me one Kubrick film that you can turn off once you start it. It's impossible. He's got this fail-safe button or something. It's impossible to turn off a Kubrick film. But I didn't like it the first time I saw it. I really wanted to be scared by it, number one. I wanted to be frightened by it in a kind of carnival fear. I wanted things to pop out at me. I wanted to jump out of my seat. I wasn't expecting a psychological shock storm. I was hoping for a kind of visceral, visual assault on all of my senses. And instead it was about the descent into madness. And he very inexorably pulled the entire audience down with him. So at that moment where, Shelley is reading the last 3 months of what he has been writing, and we see the litany of what he has written, that is the biggest shock of The Shining. That was the equivalent of the chair turning around in Psycho and the sudden reveal of Mrs. Bates. And it's more shocking than the sudden reveal of Mrs. Bates if you get into the protoplasm of that movie. If you give yourself over to it, you'll be more shocked by what he's written over the last 4 months.